I wasn't looking for it. I was driving back from my sister's late one night, cutting through side streets to avoid traffic. I turned down an unfamiliar road narrower than I expected, lined with rusting chain-link fences and broken streetlights. My GPS rerouted without prompting, showing the road as a shortcut. The digital map's smooth voice instructed me to keep going. That's when I saw it, a playground. At first glance, it looked normal. Swings swaying gently, a slide, a climbing structure. But as I slowed down, the details sharpened. The proportions were wrong. The swings were far too high, the chains thicker than usual. The slide curved at impossible angles, twisting in on itself like a Mobius strip. The climbing structure was tall, too tall, made of metal poles that stretched skyward and disappeared into the dark. There were no children, no families, no sounds except for the distant hum of the city far behind me. I parked. I don't know why. Something about it called to me. I stepped out of the car, gravel crunching underfoot. The air was heavy, cool, still. As I approached the entrance, I noticed the gate was rusted shut, but the fence had a section that had been pulled aside, creating a narrow passage. It wasn't torn like by vandals, it was inviting. I ducked through. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air shifted. Sounds dulled. My footsteps echoed softly as if the ground beneath me had become hollow. The swing chains clinked faintly, moving in a breeze I couldn't feel. I walked further in, past the seesaw that was perfectly balanced, despite no one on either side. The sandbox was dry, cracked. The grains of sand clumped together like they'd never been disturbed. Then I saw the other structures. Tall, skeletal things made of interlocking bars and tubes, winding in patterns that didn't make sense. Some of them extended underground, disappearing into holes large enough for a person to crawl through. Others rose upward into spirals that ended in platforms too small to stand on. I felt watched. There was a faint, rhythmic sound, not quite a whisper, not quite breathing, like wind pushing through hollow pipes, growing louder as I approached one of the towering structures. I peered up into it, expecting to see stars. Instead, I saw darkness, thick and shifting, as if something were moving just out of reach. I turned to leave, but the gate was gone. The gap in the fence had sealed. The playground around me seemed larger now, stretching into the dark with no end. The structures hummed softly. I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, from the far side. I froze. They didn't sound like a child's. Heavy, deliberate. I turned slowly, heart pounding. In the dim light, I glimpsed a figure, not tall, not short, proportioned wrongly. Limbs slightly too long, head tilted as though its neck couldn't quite support its weight. Its face was pale and smooth, no features except for two deep, dark indentations where eyes should have been. It stood by the slide, watching. I backed away, but the ground beneath me shifted, tilting ever so slightly like a warped playground merry-go-round. My balance wavered, and the air thickened with that low, pipe-like hum. The figure moved, not stepped, but shifted. From by the slide to just beyond the swing set, the distance vanishing in a blink as if it had simply ceased being there and reappeared closer. I stumbled toward the climbing structure, hoping for cover, but the moment I touched the cold metal, a vibration shot up my arm. The hum deepened, resonating through my bones. I heard a voice, not aloud, inside my head. You climbed as a child. You climb still. My vision swam. The ground below twisted. The sky above the playground wasn't sky anymore. It was a smooth, pale surface, rippling faintly as if I were under a massive, inverted dome. The figure was closer now. It reached a hand toward me, long fingers, too many joints, smooth skin. I backed away, but my legs felt heavy, slow, as though the air had thickened into syrup. The voice pressed closer. You climbed. Now descend. I turned, searching for the gate, but there was only more playground. The structures pulsed softly, almost breathing. The swing chains twisted, braiding themselves into long, rope-like tendrils. The figure's hand grazed my shoulder. It was cold, dry, but with a pulse beneath it, as if the structure itself was alive. I screamed. The sound was swallowed immediately, as though the air itself had no interest in carrying it. The last thing I remember was the ground splitting beneath my feet. Not cracking, opening, the playground swallowing me whole. I woke up in my car, parked on the side of the road, engine off, keys in my lap. It was morning. The GPS showed no unusual route. The shortcut wasn't listed. The road wasn't marked. But when I stepped out, the faint scent of rust and old metal followed me, and every morning since I find sand in my shoes. Dark sand. I stayed home the next night, convinced I could block it out. Pretend it wasn't real. If I ignored the sand that collected in the corners, the scent of sulfur that thickened every morning, the subtle hum vibrating through the walls, maybe it would stop. But the hum didn't stop. It intensified, resonating through my teeth, my bones, the pulse at the base of my skull. It wasn't a sound anymore. It was a presence, an awareness. It seemed to fill the spaces of the apartment, shifting shadows and pressing into the air itself, until I felt like I was breathing something that wasn't quite air. I turned off the lights, closed every window, unplugged every device, sat in complete darkness listening. The dark wasn't silent, it breathed. I sat there motionless until the hum became a pattern, a rhythm that echoed my own heartbeat, but deeper, slower, more deliberate. Shapes pressed against the walls, subtle and constant, as though something beyond the surface of the room was learning its way through. Then I heard the scraping. At first it was soft, like nails over rough wood. Then sharper, more precise. It came from beneath the floorboards. Then the walls. A methodical sound like something dragging claws along the inside of the apartment's skeleton. The sulfur thickened, not faint, but suffocating. A metallic edge layered under the rotten egg stench. I gagged, covering my mouth, but the air clung to me, heavy and greasy, seeping into my pores. A knock came from inside the wall. I froze. Another knock, closer, directly beneath my feet. I stumbled back, hearing my name whispered through the hum, threading itself around my pulse like a noose. Open. The floorboards trembled, shifting under my weight. I felt them bulge upward slightly, the grain twisting beneath me as though something below was pushing. The shadows along the walls pulsed. I bolted for the door. It was gone. The hallway twisted into itself, elongating into an impossible spiral, the walls tightening, folding over one another like the ribs of some vast breathing creature. The sand spilled from beneath the couch. A slow, steady stream of black grains that hissed softly as they pooled around my feet, clinging to my shoes, creeping up my legs. I tried to move, but the sand gripped like tar, pulling, dragging. You were always meant to stay. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was inside me, pressing against the edges of my thoughts, threading through every memory I had. The floor split. A seam opened silently, wide and black, pulsing with a vibration that rippled through the air. From it rose something shapeless yet impossibly heavy, folding upward from the seam like smoke made solid. Not a hand, not a figure, a presence, heavy, remembering. The sand rose faster, thickening around my knees, pulling me down into the split. I fought, clawing at the walls, but my hands found only smooth, cold surface, too slick to grip. The air buzzed with whispers, voices layered on voices, a rising chorus that hummed through the walls and floor and air. I screamed. The sound folded into the hum, swallowed by the pulsing rhythm. The last thing I saw before the blackness swallowed me was a pair of deep indentations where eyes should have been watching, waiting. Then I woke, on the couch. The apartment was silent, the sand was gone. The sulfur faint, almost a memory lingering at the edge of thought. I checked the floor, the walls. Nothing except faint scratches where the seam had been, long and deliberate, tracing patterns I didn't recognize but felt in my bones. I thought I was free, but the next morning the sand returned, darker, thicker. The grains hummed softly when I tried to brush them away. Each night since, the knock comes. First soft, then louder. The floor trembles beneath me, subtle vibrations threading into my pulse, syncing with the beating of my heart until I can't tell where the hum ends and I begin. The voice grows clearer, layered into the static of silence, pressing against the walls of my mind. You've always been ours. I can't sleep anymore. The sand isn't just sand now. It moves, crawls, pulls itself into shapes that dissolve when I look directly at them. It whispers in patterns I almost understand. Sometimes I wake up with the marks on my skin, thin, dark lines that trace my veins like ink drawn by an invisible hand. I tried leaving. The door wouldn't open, the windows showed nothing but thick black haze. When I screamed, the sound didn't echo. It folded into itself and disappeared. I haven't seen the sun in days. The sand has reached the ceiling. The walls breathe constantly, pulsing with faint light, patterns I can't read but feel. Last night I heard the voice from right behind me. Open! And I felt a hand, smooth, cold, but pulsing with life, pressed gently against my back. The floor split, and I realized the knock wasn't asking, it was welcoming.